Hello everyone, I am back and I am working on the C2 Grand Sport replica. So let me show you what I've got and what I've got planned. Okay, so the blue car was a customer's car. He bought it like this, and it's not an accurate replica of a Grand Sport. It's close, but it's got some issues. The major issues are in this back section right here. So a couple things. What happened is they took a C2 Corvette, 1964 Corvette, and then put some pieces on to make it look like a Grand Sport. Things like the fender flares and the vent and that scoop in the back. So if you look at it, the problems or I guess deviations from an actual Grand Sport is an actual Grand Sport did not have these vents. These are factory 1964 Corvette vents. I think it was flat here. Actually, I think there's a gas filler here. Either this side or the other side or both sides. I don't know which. The other issue is these brake vents are in the wrong place. First off, they're non-functional, but secondly, they're in the wrong place. What was the third thing? Oh, the third thing, the trunk. That's a major issue. This pseudo replica does not have a trunk. It still uses the factory C2 Corvette gas filler right there. And the actual Grand Sport has a trunk right here instead. So what needs to happen, and you can see from this that this was grafted onto, this incorrect back end was grafted onto a factory C2 Corvette, and you can see from this line right here, that's where the two pieces were grafted together. The replacement part, which is underneath here, the gray one, is correct. It also grafts on at the same area. So what I did was I made a splash mold off of this piece right here because nothing's wrong with how this was installed. It just isn't an accurate representation of a C2 Grand Sport. So what I did was I made this splash mold. The reason I made the splash mold is that now I have all of the alignment of the back end, and I'm referencing off of these fender flares. All right, so what happens is that gray piece that you see pieces of under here also comes down a certain amount all the way around here. So my plan is I will cut this off on this plane all the way around and then graft the gray piece on in its place. Now, what I was worried about was getting everything aligned. So I'm using this alignment fixture. Actually, the splash mold is now an alignment fixture. So what I did was I cut out where the vents were incorrect. You can see the blue is the incorrect vents, which is also the orange tooling gel coat. And then the gray is the correct one. So to get this to sit down on it, I had to cut away where the vent wasn't because that's where the vent belongs. What I used for alignment was the window opening because the window is the same between the two, or at least very close to it. There was a case where the window here came out more and curved, and so I had to cut this away so that this would fall in place, and the same thing here, fall in place. So I cut out for the vents, and I cut out for the area where it was interfering there. I did not have to cut anything for the trunk because obviously the trunk is an opening right now. The trunk's a separate piece. And so if I hold this down in each of the places, it does match up. It's a little bit different on the width, but that's not significant as long as it's centered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, but I wanted to do this video. So I'm going to flip this over, and if you look, you can see there is where the gray piece ends all the way around. You can't see because of the table over there, but anyway, that's where the gray ends. So ideally, I'm thinking that I should cut the blue top off exactly where the gray would fit on top of it. So that's my first question. Should I try to cut it exactly to where the two will fit, butted against each other? So my plan is, if that's what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is flip this over and from the inside, use my vibrating multi-tool and cut slots periodically. And then slots wide enough that I can take a marker and mark. And so I'll put this template back on there, and then I will transfer the marks where the gray piece ends onto here, and that'll give me a line of where I would cut if I want the two to exactly butt up against each other. Now, one of the issues is the quote, exactly butt up against each other. That's going to be hard to do. So part of me wonders maybe I should go ahead and cut a little more of the blue away, purposely leave a gap, and then fill in that gap with fiberglass. Now the other thing I'm going to do is when I cut this top off, I'm going to put a supporting strip all the way around on the back side sticking up. I'm thinking an inch on each side. So what will happen is there'll be a step right here where here's the blue body right here. Behind it is the strip that I am attaching to it. I'm going to use panel bond, and I will clamp it and make sure it's well bonded. And so there'll be a step right here. Ideally, I will take the gray piece, set it on top of this thing, and it will sit in that stepped area, and then I will panel bond it in place. So my question, one of my major questions is, should I leave a gap there and then fill that with fiberglass, or should I try to make it match exactly? Anyway, those of you that have done something like this, I would appreciate some input there. The other thing is I need to temporarily attach this splash mold to the gray piece, because when I put this on here, it's going to rest on the fender flares and on the lip, or maybe there'll be a gap there, don't know which. Again, that'll be determined. But I need this attached to it. It's close to it, you know, you can see I can push down, but of course when I put this on there, gravity's gonna make the gray piece fall down instead of standing up, especially if I have, let's say, a half-inch gap or whatever there. So I'm trying to figure out what would I use to temporarily bond these two together while I set it on there, and then attach it in place, and then remove this after it is accurately located. I thought about hot glue, but hot glue is really difficult to do over a huge area like this, but so far that's the best thing I've come up with. I could use screws, but you all know that every screw I put in there is a screw hole that I have to fix later. I would ideally rather not use a bunch of screws, but if that's the best case, then that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, I'm looking for tips on that. How would you go about temporarily holding the template splash mold in place with the gray part attached to it while the two are being transferred over, and then to be able to relieve it or remove it after it is bonded in place. All right, that's what I've got. That's what I plan on doing next time. I don't know if all of you that have kept up, I did find out the reason why this thing is cut right here, is because the factory frame needed to be taken out. The factory frame was a rectangular piece that had a support for a bumper back here. The Grand Sport does not have a bumper, and it has a tubular frame that stops well short of there. It stops right here where you can see, there you go. It's actually capped off right there. So to remove the factory rectangular box frame, they cut this section right here. And that's because it curves under. So they cut it here and there, and then they pried this out enough to get the frame out from under it, and then they slid the new tubular frame underneath. So I was baffled as to why in the world did they make those cuts when I didn't see a reason for them. So luckily I'm on a Grand Sport group and somebody suggested that was why it was done. It was easier than, I don't know, taking the body off some other way. I don't know. But anyway, come to find out that is not that uncommon of a practice. All right, so when I get to that point, all I have to do is I can use some screws and washers and put this back in place like it belongs. I actually put it back in place when I made this splash mold, but then when I removed it, it messed this up. No big deal, again. All right, that's all I can think of right now. So anyway, feel free to give me some suggestions and ideas on how to do this. Of course, I'm going to put a bunch of C-clamps every place I can, you know, all of these places that I can get to, but the other areas, again, right now gravity's helping because the gray part is supported by the table and the orange temporary template is sitting on top of it. But if I lift up this orange template, you can see it's just going to come straight out. So if I were to pick this up and attempt to put it in place, the gray piece would stay here. I need to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate. And if you don't like what I'm doing, you don't know Jack. Bye.